One of my favorite parts of RPGs is overworld exploration. Whether it be the platforming and puzzle solving of the Mario RPGs, the dungeon crawling and realized city of Persona 5, or open fantasy world and mini dungeons of Skyrim, running around in the overworld is always a vital aspect of these games. The Xenoblade games easily have my pick for the best exploration of any RPGs, and most of that comes down to their interesting worlds made of titans, the wide expansive fields and oceans to traverse, the sheer amount of collectibles to find, the monsters to fight, and the quests to complete. Oh, and the music especially. You cannot forget to mention the music. Today I want to count down my top 10 favorite Xenoblade areas. My criteria for what I'll be looking for in each area is how much variety there is with biomes, how many interesting and iconic spots there are, how diverse the ecosystem is, how pretty the area looks, how much I like the towns that inhabit these worlds if they have one, and the music. Of course, personal opinion plays a huge part in this as well, as this isn't an objective list. With that being said, let's go over my honorable mentions. If this is only an honorable mention, that should be a sign of how high the bar is set. This area shows up at a peak in Xenoblade 1's story and is heart-shatteringly beautiful and tragic. Telethia corpses are strewn about while Mechon patrol this dead city. The visuals are absolutely stunning and the music is just my god. The night version might actually be a top 5 track in the entire game. I actually used to have a save file just for this area, but I accidentally saved over it. Oops. I will admit actually traversing this place can be a little bit disorienting, maybe to a frustrating degree sometimes, but as a vibe place it's peak. How do you describe magic? Because however you describe magic is also how you describe the feeling once you hear Colony 9's song kick in for the first time. I don't know what I expected after I started Xenoblade 1, but being greeted with lush green canyons, sandy beaches with glittering water, and a town I can comfortably call home is exactly what Colony 9 is. The entire opening of Xenoblade 1 is so indescribably important to me, and Colony 9 has a lot to do with why that is. I have so many memories of fighting Crabbles, swimming out far to explore the islands, and especially of taking on Mechon during the attack. I especially love the colony itself. It's a little slice of coziness, and the side stories that transpire here are so comforting to re-experience. The only criticism I can give is that most of Colony 9 is either linear paths or a huge, mostly empty body of water. These things are great for making upcoming areas even more impressive, but keep Colony 9 from reaching the top 10. I'd also like to give a shout out to Colony 9 from Future Redeemed. It's a brilliant little callback. Fuzzy Oranges, Calm Piano, Howling Wind. Valak Mountain is a beautiful, harrowing place full of danger and tranquility. Contrasting with the crystals shooting beams of ether into the sky is the wounds left by the Mechonis' strikes. There are so many exciting things, like the geysers that blast you into the sky, the ice slides that aren't quite programmed right, and the lava caves. Yet, there are also secret rooms locked behind ancient Hyentia technology, mountain peaks that let you see far into the distance, and of course the room the Monado is kept in, complete with the ghosts of the Monado exhibitionist that took Shulk that fateful day. The only reason that this isn't on the list is because it's pretty empty, which makes sense but hurts the exploration, and also because during the day it's pretty much just a standard mountain. Black Mountains is a mostly linear gauntlet to the top of what used to be Valak Mountain. There's platforming, exploring, scaling, Matthew even freezes his balls off, it's got it all. On top of this, it has a power rock score accompanying it, adding even more to both the atmosphere of this heroic climb and my love for the area. You fight all sorts of amazing monsters on the way up, including dragons, which is completely amazing. Now, is it as pretty as Valak Mountain in 1? No, it's not even close. But as the final explorable area in any Xenoblade game ever, I'd say it's an appropriate send-off to my favorite game franchise. Appropriately enough, this area gave me chills. And here we have a contender for the prettiest area in any game ever. Actually, I can't think of a prettier thing in a game that isn't from Xenoblade 1, ironically enough. Satoral Marsh is another massively important area to me, as it has so many interesting places to go, like the castle with the Ignas and the Hyentia podium. The music is fun and bouncy during the day, and jaw-droppingly gorgeous at night. Even though the population is mostly birds and Ignas and a couple giant turtles, there are a few interesting characters to meet, including the bread pollen-hoarding Nopon who lives in the cave. My only complaint is during the day this is basically just your average swamp level. Other than that, it's brilliant and easily a standout. Alright, with all my honorable mentions out of the way, let's go from the areas I adore to the areas that mean more to me than anything. Okay, listen, Future Connected is pretty much objectively the worst Xenoblade campaign, and it's not even close. But to claim it's mid? I could never. I love everything about Xenoblade 1, and even if some aspects of its epilogue aren't perfect, there are some huge strengths, including its amazing world to explore, the Biona's Shoulder. Right off the bat, bringing back what was essentially a testing area is very cool and scores some points already, but the fact they went so above and beyond to realize it makes this area uniquely special. Biona's Shoulder immediately sets itself apart from other Xenoblade field settings by having an incredibly diverse amount of biomes. You of course have many stunning fields to explore, with lakes, pastures, and the iconic Xenoblade arches of ground high above in the sky that you can explore. But there are also so many other places to explore, such as dungeons, a cave with a tomb, a red field with a river, and bridges between islands hovering above the ocean, millions of miles in the sky. There are also 2 towns you can find, the first being Companion's Cape. It's very small and barely populated, but that is of course because story-wise it's just a campsite. Grandel, the bigger town, is made in the ruins of some high Entia structures. While it's not a fully developed town like Colony 9 or Hidden Village, this is because it's full of survivors who are stuck on Biona's Shoulder. It's a cute little town with huge wheat fields, a lake, a graveyard, and a killer view at the top. It's probably not many people's favorite Xenoblade town, but it gets the job done while having a unique theme. One of the most impressive things about Biona's Shoulder is its scale. It's a ginormous and fully interconnected area that really pushes the power of the Switch while looking beautiful in the process. Because it's so large, it does occasionally have frame rate issues, and the pawn specters certainly don't help with this fact, but I think it's worth having such a stunning world. I guess the last thing to bring up is the music, which is less bombastic, but gives a melancholic yet memorable tune that really helps immerse me into the beauty of the world. I'll fully admit I'm less emotionally attached to this world because I'm less familiar with Future Connected, but despite that, I have no issue calling it one of my all-time favorites in the series. I have a lot of problems with 3's exploration. I tried to convey it all in my video about Xenoblade 3's world design, but I'm unsure if I really even scratched the surface of how complicated it all is to me, or if I properly conveyed the fun parts of exploring that kept me engaged, and the less fun parts that make me look fondly back at 1 and 2's. I think an issue I didn't bring up was the theming of a lot of 3's worlds. There are like 3 different areas that feel like they're trying to be the next Gar Plains or Gormati Field. Originally I was under the impression that Kade Falls was just the Gar Plains of Xenoblade 3 Attempt 4, but I think after revisiting this world I feel a lot different. Just starting with the presentation, this is probably visually the prettiest place in all of 3. The water is absolutely stunning, and the arches of ground, waterfalls, and the general feeling of being surrounded by large landscapes is a magical feeling. There is surprisingly little filler. You can tell my complaints about the areas feeling like a group of hallways isn't really here as much. Granted, the only way out of here is a linear path, but that linear path has a lot of diversions and it's very scenic. This whole place gives a lot of killer views, and since the environment and background is so pretty, I can imagine this would be a nice place to revisit and chill. The path leading up through Kade Falls feels chaotic and broken, yet it comes together to be traversable. If you pay attention, you can see the remains of what appears to be the Titans, which adds to the disheveled vibe. I'll admit there's a lot of water here, though I do think it's tame compared to some of the stuff 1 made you swim through. Then there's the secret area, Kade Fountainhead. And not gonna lie, I wish the whole area looked like this. It has a stunning blue color scheme and the lights are to die for. Unfortunately, it's just one small area, and the rest of the area has a realistic color palette. Anyways, the wildlife here is diverse. There's the Ungoro Piranax, the Spocked Aligo, the Ruffian Hawks, the Raptor Rogel, and the absolutely adorable Seimo Oddle. Oh, also the Hanasa Amoni that just love to target me while I'm exploring, even though I'm a measly 70 levels higher than them. Oh, and then there's Colony Lambda. I think it's really cool this area is hidden behind a waterfall, and the turtle evidence is awesome, but other than that, it's a pretty standard Xenoblade 3 colony. No unique music, copy and paste NPCs, no unique buildings, and very standard and boring side quest. Honestly, this might be one of my least favorite colonies because of the theming of rock! Another thing that's kinda about Kade Falls is the music. I'd expect something much more exciting and bombastic for a giant waterfall world, or at the very least something more tropical, but it honestly feels like music better fit for a museum. Then again, this is a problem not unique to this area, I think it just brings it down. For an area I have very little emotional attachment to, I really enjoyed my revisit of it, and I think it's a standout, especially by 3's standards. Let's get the 2 flaws out of the way. Field skills here can be annoying with multiple large checks for side quests and these win things. Second, this area can feel like a Xenoblade 1 area sometimes with how much empty space there is. With that out of the way, this place is amazing. Visually it is jaw-dropping. The floating city against the harsh cliffs in the background, the large expanses of white everywhere. When I first played this game, I thought there'd be no way we could go down and explore the bottom of Tantal. Xenoblade 2 was infamously rushed and it's just too big to be real. Which is why I was shaken by the harrowing climb down through the ruins of the abandoned towers you take to get to the bottom, where you're met with an expansive and vast landscape to comb through. It was one of the most pleasant surprises 2 had to offer. The amount of creatures you find is absurd. There's the elegant Dormic Eluks, the annoying Dino Gianas, the terrifying enraged Goggles, the squabbling scavenger Turkins, and the eldritch Samuel Squoods. According to the Xenoblade Wiki, there are 106 total fightable creatures here, including bosses and unique monsters. That's an impressive amount for an open world game, let alone a single area in a game that was rushed. Then of course there's my baby, Cloud King Ken. I probably have 6 or 7 hours just grinding out fights on him before I got the DLC. He's still a massively important super boss because of his core chip, the Moon Matter chips. In Tantal, there are many things to find, including explorable ruins, Turking camps, caves, ravines packed with monsters, and many icy lakes. That's just on the bottom. On the top, you'll find structures that lead you to treasures and hidden areas, all with so many different challenges to overcome. Traversing these ruins on your initial journey to the bottom is an important part to me. Knocking over giant ice beams to form bridges and jumping down from structures to take shortcuts is very fun. I'm not even sure if there's an intended route because of how free you are to get down however you'd like. The Kingdom of Tantal is a depressingly run-down town full of desperate citizens trying to survive, and the somber music that plays in town is actually a prayer for the suffering of the kingdom's people to end. Speaking of music, while I love the day theme of Tantal, the night theme is easily my preferred song, as it feels like a spark of hope and desperation in a cold wasteland. It's soothing yet haunting, just like all of Tantal. Hell yeah, More Ardain! The song accompanying More Ardain is so overly amazing that it almost overshadows everything else about it. Roaming the Waste is one of my favorite songs in the entire series, up there with Xenoblade 1's title theme and Drifting Soul. That is a serious accomplishment knowing how peak this series' music is. Anyways, More Ardain itself also rules. The vibe shows off the death of the Titan just as good as Tantal. Whereas Tantal is dying from a freezing climate, More Ardain is being so overused and destroyed as essentially a walking husk, where humans parasitically create factories on its body, pumping out waste. Because of this, a lot of people don't like how More Ardain looks, but I don't know, I kinda like it. The main explorable bit is at the top of this open field section, but a lot of the area you journey through wraps around the side of the Titan. The factories are messes of abandoned structures, all caving in on themselves, while being home to many dastardly creatures. Crawling through these structures is really fun, and gives the same free-flow feeling as scaling down Tantal. There are also many side areas to explore, such as the anarchist military base that's hidden opposite to the factories, the pipes that flow through More Ardain, and the secret island that's very tricky to find. You can do a lot of scaling down the side of the Titan to find secrets, and there are multiple parts like the crates that are transported on a conveyor and the rails you grind down that just scratch and itch so well. Alba Cavendish is chock full of interesting side quests and storylines, and traversing the tops of buildings is just so satisfying. I love when games let you do that. Maybe I should try Assassin's Creed. The song that plays in Alba Cavendish is a fantasy power rock song, which of course means it's phenomenal, and exploring the port and castle is very fun. I would say More Ardain's side quests are the best of the entire games. It feels like every single quest that takes place here has a developed, unique, overly amazing storyline. From the quest where a secret anarchist organization wants to take over, Newt's story where she does a simulated infiltration of the castle and saves Emperor Nile from a group of assassins in the process, Vale's story about saving a young Nopon from a doomsday cult trying to summon a demon, Percival's story about trying to stop a gang of loan sharks called the Bloody Lobsters from assassinating a woman, only for the party to fail and come back to her dead body. Oh yeah, and don't forget about the Turkin chefs. Honestly, More Ardain is so amazing, it would be hard to top. Whatever's next would have to be the most iconic, gorgeous, impressive area, right? Well, here it is. The most iconic area in all of Xenoblade. The wide open fields, the waterfalls, the giant arches, the murderous gorilla. Yep, that's Bionis Lego, right? Or as I'll be calling it, Gar Plain, because I like that a lot more personally. The opening of going through a cramped ravine to this larger-than-life field as the music swells is unforgettable, and it blew my mind. Looking up, you can already see the sword stabbing the Bionis. Already Gar Plains has sold me. But even more impressively, the gameplay matches the vibes. It's admittedly simplistic compared to Tantal or More Ardain, but I don't know. Going around and defeating Ardens and other monsters for quests, finding the Turkin camp, chilling in the woods with the Antals, going through the winding caves, crossing the bridge above Ragwell Lake, and exploring the narrow paths on the cliff sides of Gar Plains are all just such fun things to do. On top of that, there's also a neat little town here, the refugee camp. It's nothing crazy, it's one of the smallest towns in the series, but that of course is the point. It's tucked away in this little corner past the woods, and god, I just love the aesthetic. The folks you meet here are survivors of the Colony 6 Mechon attack, so it's mostly elderly and children. Most of the quests here are simple, but they get the job done, and accepting a ton of them and then going out to explore and knock out a ton is very satisfying. The music when you're out exploring Gar Plains during the day is exciting and memorable, while the nighttime track is soothing and reassuring, reminding you that just because the world is unfamiliar and scary, it doesn't mean it can't be beautiful. You'll always have the people you meet. The refugee camp music also sounds very somber yet cozy, defeated yet hopeful that there will be a shining light at the end of the tunnel. Also, this boat thing's pretty cool too. There's a reason Gar Plain is my background for when I'm talking. To me, it's not only encompassing of adventure, not only encompassing of Xenoblade as a series, but is also a home for me, a place I can run through any time life is rough for me. Shulk with this trusty red Monado surrounded by green and blue and a larger-than-life plane will always be the most iconic Xenoblade imagery to me, and whenever I question what my favorite game is, I always think back to that mental image to remind myself, oh yeah, this game is the one that touched my heart and imagination the most. I don't think Xenoblade could have a better opening field level if they tried. Gar Plain is simply too perfect. Oh yeah, I forgot this is Xenoblade we're talking about. Of course they improved it. You can see the Titan's head move. This game came out in 2017, how does it look so good? Gormat is an improvement on Gar Plains in just about every way, and as much as I adore Gar Plains, Gormat holds an even more special place in my heart. From the opening moments of Rex waking up on Pyra's lap to the post-game where I went back to fight the ferocious territorial Gonzalez, the field itself is open, vast, detailed, and colorful, and the music really pumps you up and gets you ready to explore. There are so many memorable spots, like the Way Tree, Laita Oasis, Lasham Island, Xenos Deb Bowl, Dawnview Grotto, and the Honeypot Grotto. The diverse amount of creatures you find here is insane, from Wolves and Ardens to Goggles and Soros. I love the 2 layers that you can explore. One at the bottom that's more vast, and one at the top that's more twisty. In between these layers you can find winding caves and vines to climb. There's also the path to Uman's shipyard with the driver bounty hunters and that stupid bird. During your first trip to Gormat, you'll be in these misty woods, and oh my god, the nostalgia. This area gives me so many memories of when I played Xenoblade 2 for the first time, and the swamp with the large array of creatures, the winding paths, the bridges above the giant pits, they all hit that sentimental part of me so hard. The music here especially calms me. It reminds me of how exciting and new Xenoblade felt at the time. The transition from leaving these woods and going to the field is somehow even more jaw-dropping than Gar Plains' transition. And then we have Torrigoth, my beloved. A town filled to the brim with interesting storylines, explorable rooftops, and unimaginable fantasy scenery. Just running around Torrigoth and looking at the amazing views is an activity I do quite a lot. I especially enjoy the quest, from growing an Arden up to become an unstoppable beast, helping a Gormati citizen leave behind his racist parents to go live with an Ardanian, and just generally helping out townsfolk to make their lives more comfortable. Oh, yeah, in Vess's quest. It has a gut punch ending where her driver dies and the cast barely even know how to react. It's a hauntingly calm scene. Torrigoth is certainly a contender for my favorite town in a Xenoblade game. I also quite enjoy the Torna version of Gormat and love the changes they added and the lore they made, so you can consider that another honorable mention. Overall, I am swept away by Gormat Providence, and my love for it knows no bounds. Oh boy, this area is peak. Uriah starts off as a more linear area as you follow along a path. It's of course very open with many obstacles and branching paths, but it brings you to many unique places as you see what the inside of a Titan's like. I especially love this lake area where I always try to take on as many enemies as possible on new playthroughs. As you follow this path, you'll find the Garfont mercenaries, who have a small campsite. The pools of water in these rocks and the deep blue hues come together to make such a uniquely cozy little place to vibe, and your blades coming out as interactable NPCs is such a good idea. After you leave that area, you can follow this path up to Uriah's stomach, which just, wow. It's humongous, with waterfalls, a giant lake, and the beautiful Sophronius trees. As you journey through, you'll traverse winding trails over pits, tide pools with rivers, and you'll scale down the side of this mountain, all to reach the lake, which is vast with small islands everywhere. You can find such a wide variety of monsters here, and so much wildlife and fauna that looks distinct from every other fantasy world I've seen. There are many nooks and crannies to explore, such as this hidden cave that is visible from the second room at the entrance. As you explore, this beautiful song swells. It perfectly illustrates how adventurous yet breathtaking Uriah is. There are also arches of ground that you can climb up that lead to an Igna camp and a dam you need to drain. As you continue traversing up to this higher part, you can hike this trail that eventually leads you to Fonzamaima. Fonzamaima is a large bustling town, and it is beautiful. Before you even enter, you get to see rice fields and Titan warships, which I feel is a great contrast between the peace and war Uriah is facing. You enter into a bustling town with markets and shops, and can climb up through the town, seeing more and more shops and houses. You can even climb and parkour on the houses, which is always something I love. Uriah is extremely detailed with many places to visit, such as this river section, the giant lake with the docks that actually has an island you can swim to, the theater, this man-made section that I don't even know what to call, and of course the Elethra ruins, which are partially destroyed by Mithra. Also, there's like bandits that attack you because of a quest in Mor Ardain, which is a very nice detail. Uriah is stunning and large and blew me away the first time I played. I'll never forget how I felt. The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker is one of my favorite Zelda games ever. It has mostly everything I love from a standard Zelda game, with a pirate adventure theme. Sailing around the Great Ocean is both atmospheric and exciting, and exploring new islands is... Okay, I think you get the bit now. Erythia Sea is probably the largest area in any Xenoblade game, and that's because it's a vast ocean. The main crux is sailing to islands, and then getting on foot and exploring those islands. And before you ask, yes, it was necessary to make everyone wear swimwear. This is the beach after all. Before I start with the on foot, I'll start with the sailing. This is an entirely unique gimmick to just this area, and I think they handled it pretty well. Sailing is exciting, and it controls decently for the most part. Since Erythia Sea is so large, there are lots of hidden areas to find by sailing. It was handled pretty much exactly how I'd hope a gimmick like this would be handled, and it's one one of the many reasons I love this area. On foot is just as good. The islands are mostly linear, a few being made entirely up of linear paths, but I think it works decently well. Each area has sprawling beaches with white sands, pathways with yellowish-green grass, and even some crystals and other interesting things sticking out. It makes exploring interesting visually, which I felt 3 could struggle with sometimes. One of the best parts is how many different islands there are to explore, and how varied they are. One island might have you climb up sandy hills and avoid sinkholes, another might have high-level gigantic monsters, and another might be entirely composed of zip lines. This variety keeps exploration extremely fresh and constantly rewarding. And god, I just love the theme. There are some areas that just really do it for me, like these islands connected by bridges. I already gushed about how much I love tropical themed places in my Mario Sunshine video, but this just takes that love to Xenoblade. The only real weakness of both sailing and exploring is the music. Both tracks are very tranquil and do eventually get good, but they don't really fit the excitement of sailing and the exploration of islands, and can kinda get grating after a while. There are 3 different colonies you can find in Arythia Sea. The first one is Colony Mew, which is mostly comprised of kids. This area has one of my favorite hero quests in the game, where Fiona heartbreakingly finds out her best friend is a Mobius. Colony Mew itself is a little bland, but it does have a really nice beach, and I love the islands you traverse before you enter Colony Mew. Colony 15 is a tiny campsite with barely anything in it, but it has Triton, which is cool, I guess. The last colony is the Lost Colony, which is hands down my favorite in the game. It brings back the Sophronias from Araya, while also being an isolated, untouched civilization who live peacefully. It has a beautiful lake and a unique song, plus it has tie-in related story stuff here, so it's an all-around win. Overall, Arythia Sea seems too impressive to be real, and I don't know how they'll ever top the scale and immense sense of wonder Arythia Sea gives in Xenoblade 4. Lefteria Archipelago is uniquely special. Special in the way that it's sacred. Nothing bad really ever happens here. It's almost like a safe haven from the struggles of Xenoblade 2's dying world. Whereas Gorma is being taken over by more Ardain, who have already destroyed their Titan, Uraya is preparing for war, and Tantal is isolating themselves and destroying their economy and Titan in the process, Lefteria is just zen. It's a tropical themed collection of islands with a relaxing song that swells into the grandness you'd expect from Xenoblade 2. While the Titans themselves are stationary, you can see many island Titans floating around in the sky peacefully, like jellyfish. You can follow little paths that go through the ocean, letting you see creatures swimming around on the seafloor. You can go out and explore islands on the Cloud Sea. There is so much to love about the setting. The colors are especially just so nice. The white sand, the light green grass, the white Cloud Sea and Cloud Sea wall, the blue sky, it's all so beautiful. While I'll admit this area isn't sprawling, it makes up for it by having 2 paths you can pick. One path is more like a relaxed walk through this wondrous world, and the other is a lot more dangerous and exciting, taking you through more thrilling places. This is such a genuinely amazing idea for a level, and this mechanic sets it apart from every other area in the game. As you go from island to island, you walk along these strips of land that are above the Great Cloud Sea, giving it an immense feeling of scale. Each island you go to looks unique from the others, and all of them offer different challenges and collectibles. There are just as many secrets to find as any other Xenoblade 2 area, such as the high area you can climb by timing a jump on this flowing sand. Fonset Village is easily one of my all-time favorite Xenoblade towns. It's so quaint and charming, and it's right next to the beach. The fields, the crops, the different settings, the different buildings such as Auntie Corn's house and the school, the graveyard where you meet Rex's parents, there is just so much to love. This is also where you can find the Spirit Crucible Alps entrance, which is basically this game's bottom of the well. The music especially is extremely comforting. Chapter 5 is already probably my favorite chapter in all of Xenoblade 2, and visiting Lefteria is a huge reason why. Xenoblade 1 is a very important game to me. Its story is still the best story in any game I've ever played, and is probably my favorite story I've ever experienced, period. There are a lot of Xenoblade moments that changed me as a person, and possibly my favorite moment in the entire series is when Shulk is reunited with Fiora on Fallen Arm. After a night together, you finally set out to look for all your friends, and you hear this genuinely stunning song. Fallen Arm is my favorite area in any Xenoblade game. It's a mostly beach-themed area, which as you might be able to tell by now, I like beach areas quite a bit. As you explore the beautiful beach, you eventually go through this abandoned mechanical area that was once a factory or structure on the Mechonis. As you keep going through, you eventually get to the main field, which is so visually stunning it almost hurts. There are tons of places to go, and it feels like the perfect size, so there's very little filler. There are the digits that have different monsters and items to find that are actually made up of the Mechonis' fingers. There are beaches, and then there's the junks. I quite like the junks for what it is. It's an area full of survivors of everything that's going on in the Mechonis. Everyone here simply wishes for peace. Going through their little town is almost surreal, and the quests are all of course very fun. There are some areas you can traverse to by swimming through crevices or chasms, which is very cool, and there's never too much swimming. There's also a great variety of Mechon and Bionis creatures to fight, which is extremely refreshing after going through 2 areas consisting only of Mechon. It feels like everything you find here was washed ashore, giving an almost abandoned island vibe. As you explore more and more of Fallen Arm, you're inevitably going to find a ladder that reaches far up into the sky. When you finally scale it, it gets to this platform that overlooks the entire area. this is Xenoblade magic. This is why I care so much about this series, why I continue to discuss it and talk about these games, why I think everyone should try Xenoblade. In my favorite area, during my favorite part of the story, at my favorite place to look out, it reminds me of why games and art are so important, and how much the media I consume has changed and inspired me. So that was my top 10 Xenoblade areas. What do you think? Would you include any areas I didn't? Do you agree or disagree with my lists? Let me know, I'd love to hear and see your guys' lists. But until next time, thanks for watching and have a great day.